Hey guys, what's up? This is Casio. So I've pretty much covered everything there is to cover in progressive chess in the last few videos. And I notice I've made several mistakes along the way in these videos, sometimes forgetting to mention certain things on the board or confusing certain things, saying one side can win when they can't, etc. So yeah, I kind of have new respect for people who make these videos. It's kind of hard to go over things even that you know well. You sometimes just mess it up. But at any rate, today I'm going to talk about just the starting position of regular progressive chess. And the question I get asked the most about progressive chess is it a win for white? Is it a win for black? Is it a draw? And there was this big argument on the Wikipedia page for progressive chess about, someone tried to argue that because black always went second, the progressive chess should favor them because they make more moves, which was obviously a kind of a dumb argument because you could easily start on series 2 and say, well, white's going to get more moves on every second series starting there, so the argument didn't make much sense. Whether or not progressive chess is a win really has to do with who gets kind of knocked out first, as I've shown, and there's kind of a natural tendency for that to be white in the starting position. If black doesn't do any promotions, then he often, and even when he does in a lot of positions, he winds up getting killed. And so I sort of suspect if progressive chess is a win for one side, it's a win for white. But I think the game is probably a very narrow draw. That's my suspicion anyway. So I'm just going to start going through what I think are the best series. Of course, I have no way to know, and I've worked on this a lot with a couple other people who play progressive chess, including Russell Inham and some others, and we constantly find new ideas, and we think the series wins for black, and then oh no, now we find this for white, and black is completely hopeless, and but then we find this for black, and so on. So it's really hard. You would really probably need a supercomputer to figure this game out. So the first thing to note in the starting position is that every first move for white, like just random move like a4 or something, probably just gets killed by e5, e4. This threatens very simple checkmates on f2, and white can't, in none of these series can he play d4, bishop g5, bishop d8 like he would want to, because he just gets mated on f2 very simply. And so pretty much every first move we can immediately say is refuted by e5, e4. Some of them take a little bit more finesse. I can definitely say the absolute worst first move white can make is knight f3. Unlike in regular chess, e5, e4 hits the knight, and so it's even more powerful. So even if he spends this whole series, dodging the mail on f2, he might still be hanging the f3 knight, etc. Some of these series, though, take a little bit more finesse, like d3. Here e5, e4 is probably not best. You don't want to move the e5 and the e5 pawn in response to d4. So here I would probably recommend. I'd probably play d5. I'm not sure what other second move. I mean, d5, c6 can't be bad. d5, c5 might be okay too. And if white takes the queen, black can certainly take the queen back. Also, d5, knight f6 might be okay here, because the main series that refutes this involves playing bishop e5 check, and that's not available here with d3. And even if we just play a normal series where white takes black's queen on the 3, black takes white's queen on the 4, white will then be unable to play his bishop takes rook idea on the 5, because without playing both e4 and d4. So I think just d5, any reasonable move against d3. Against e3, white can't play d4, bishop g5, bishop d8, so we don't mind playing e5 here. And you probably don't want to play d5 because of queen g4, queen c8, queen d8. But a move like knight h6, e5, knight h6 here seems completely fine. E5, f6 is probably also completely fine. By completely fine, I mean black's probably winning. Progressive chess is very narrow, and probably the only moves that white can play to avoid losing on move 1 are e4 and d4. F3, black can maybe play e5, e4, but maybe just e5 and something else, or d5 and something else. Probably d5 is better because it doesn't allow this d4, bishop g5, bishop d8. and that should also be winning. But it's worth pointing out that f3 isn't as stupid a move as it looks like. It's probably one of the better first moves if you were to just rank them, although it almost certainly still loses. So the most direct series that white can play, you might think that e4 is the most direct series because it threatens this checkmate on f7. But progressive chess is really more about material. Material is more threatening than checkmate, which if they dodge the checkmate while making other moves, they're doing the material race. So I think of d4 as the materialistic series because the bishop on c1 threatens to take the queen on d8 and on the 3, and so that's a better idea, I think. Though I don't think d4 is necessarily better than e4. I'm really not sure, but d4 is the direct approach. It's basically saying I'm going to play bishop f4, bishop c7, bishop d8 if you let me, or bishop g5, bishop e7, bishop d8. And here black has a lot of bad responses. So I'm going to go through like some of the bad responses and show why they're bad, and before moving on to the better responses against d4. So first, let's look at series involving e5. e5, e takes d4 is a very tempting series if you're just starting out in progressive chess. It's not readily obvious how bad this is. And so many people play this, people coming from chess think, oh, I want to move my center pawns because I'm developing and things like that. But the problem is progressive chess is really all about who has the fastest route to taking material. And in this case, white's bishop cannot take black's queen in 2 moves, and white's queen, black can't take white's queen in 2 moves at all. He's going to have to play, d5, bishop f5, bishop c2, bishop c1, unless white lets him take it with his pawn. But the problem with that is, as we looked at in our discussion on the spare move, in this position, white has the strong spare move f4. The reason f4 and not h4 some other is that there is a checkmate threat. And for example, if white just did something like this, knight a3, black threatens this checkmate that we talked about before, c1 queen and bishop b4. And this is even if the knight stayed on b1. For example, h4, we would take the knight so it can't block, which would then be pinning the queen, and we will play bishop b4 mate. So f4 is really the ideal spare move here, and in this position, black cannot both get a queen and a piece off, which he really needs to do in the material race. He really needs to end his 4 in this, especially since his development is not great here. And the problem is he can't do that because if he goes king takes d8, d3, d takes c2, c takes d1 queen, white just takes it and then checkmates by promoting on f8. So we can see that e5 ed is not going to work out. I'm not going to go through and show long examples of why these don't work. You'll just kind of have to play through it yourself, and I can reference you to games if you're interested. But suffice it to say, if we can't get to a certain material point, I'm just going to cut off my analysis and say, okay, this is a win. Because game after game has shown that for example, if black just plays d3, dc, cd, and then some other move, the white just plays bishop e7, f8, g7, h8. He's just up too much material there. He'll be up 2 whole pieces at the end of the 5, and with black not being able to take anything back. So that one's bad. In addition, d5 is a very natural move because white says, I'm going to take your queen, black says, well, I'm going to take your queen right back. But the second move is very, very tricky. And if you, for example, played e5, then in addition to d takes e5, queen takes d5, queen takes d8, which gets 2 pawns on the queen and may be sufficient, this series, bishop g5, bishop takes d8, h4 is very strong. h4, white would rather play h4 than f4 in this position because he hasn't yet taken the d pawn. There's no mate threat. He needs 5 moves to mate on f2. So h4 is the more ideal series here, and then there's the same problem if black goes king takes d8, bishop f5, bishop takes c2, bishop takes d1. White can just take it and then promote on f8. Even though he didn't take a rook here, he reincarnated his queen, and this is just really strong. It's hard to really suggest anything for black. He's down 6 pieces to 4. He has to spend a tempo, and it's just hard to find anything here. So what else? D5, C5 has been played a lot, but this has the same problem as D5, E5. One of the ideas with D5, E5, which is that D takes C5, Queen takes D5, Queen takes D8 looks to be very strong. Even though Black just gets this piece back right away, this is kind of a dangling pawn. It can become very dangerous. Black doesn't really have any good ideas to play right now. I mean, he can if he tries something like Bishop H3, Bishop takes G2, Bishop takes H1. Then he just gets mated by like Bishop F4, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, sorry, Bishop H3 instead. We got to cover D7, and this would be mate. You know, so he doesn't really have a material response that can come back from losing that much material. D4, D5, Knight F6 has been played quite a bit. And this series isn't bad. I played a game with Linneman where I played Bishop F4, Bishop C7, Bishop D8, and it was only a draw. So I think theoretically, a lot of these, there's a lot of other series that have been played against us over the years, like G4, G5, GF, E4, E5, EF, Knight C3, Bishop G5, Bishop takes F6. I'm not really convinced about any of those, but there's one series that gives this an enormous amount of trouble, and that is E4, E5, Bishop B5 check. This is somewhat of the mirror problem of, you know, how I said Knight F3 was a really bad first move because of E5, E4. By the same token, I think Knight F6 has this problem. With E4, E5, Bishop B5 check, this is like a really good example of a swarming series, like where even though White didn't take anything, Black's knight is just badly misplaced, and this shows how moving pieces out is just not, you know, you think in regular chess, I want to develop, so I want to get my pieces out. In progressive chess, the only time you want to move a piece out is if it's taking something. Sometimes you'll move a piece like directly in front of your king, but even that, you'd be surprised how often that piece can now be taken a lot more easily, you know, by some enemy piece going on a rampage. So really, you want to leave all your pieces back. You want to move pawns, if at all possible, and you only move your piece out when it's basically it's going into the enemy camp to take pieces, and you don't care about its fate after that. So this, I've analyzed a lot of tries against this series, and none of them seem to. I haven't found anything that seems to. For Black here, he just seems to be losing badly. Black's main problem here is that all the good series that he wants to play that might do okay here leave this configuration with the E pawn and the knight, and then White just plays EF, FG, GH, Queen F8, and takes like practically every kind of chess piece that it is possible to take. For example, Queen D7, Queen takes B5, Queen D3, Queen takes D1. White can in 5 moves take every kind of chess piece. King takes D1, EF, FG, GH, H. Queen takes F8 check, and this is just completely busted. 6 pieces to 3. So that's the basic problem with D5, Knight F6. He can play C6, Bishop G4, Bishop takes D1, but the problem here is that he's sitting on the checkmating pattern that we mentioned before with Bishop G5 and a pawn promoting on D8. And if he plays a move like E6, he also has to worry about rook double check type patterns. But for example, A4, Rook A3, Rook C3, Rook takes C6, Rook takes E6, double check is mate. So he really has to move the queen if he's going to play this and deliver check. So in this position, C6, Bishop G4, Bishop takes D1, Queen A5 is an idea. Again, Queen A5 is really the only try, like something like Queen B6